Chelsea, Liverpool and Arsenal all dropped points. Spurs draw against bottom of the table Sunderland. Couldn't script it, or could you? This is your e-Spurs podcast.
Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Tottenham, Tottenham!
Hi guys, welcome back for another hour of talking all things Tottenham Hotspur. Please don't forget to subscribe to the show as always via iTunes or Acast, and you can get every new episode direct as it's released. You can of course follow us across all the usual social media platforms. We're on Twitter and Instagram at e_Spurs. You can check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/e-Spurs page. We're also pleased to announce that we've got a new website that you can now follow us on. That's e-Spurs.com. So check out all of our latest information on there. Tonight, pleased to announce we've got Jason back with us here. Hello Jace, how are you?
Not bad, mate. Enjoyed me 20-hour round trip for a drab 0-0.
And I'm pleased to announce we've got a massive Spurs fan joining us tonight. We've got Vass with us. Vass, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Ricky.
Pleasure to have you with us tonight, Vass. And just out of interest, Vass, if anyone wants to kind of follow you on Twitter, I have to say Vass is one of the guys out there keeping the whole perspective about Spurs. Vass, what's your Twitter handle?
Yeah, it's at VCon1, VKON number 1.
Good. He's always worth a follow, like I say, very much keeping all things kind of level-headed on Spurs. I think it's what you have to be after last night's frustrating 0-0. We'll start with you, Vass. Very much a game in which, you know, a lot of people going into that would have probably fancied Spurs to win against bottom of the table Sunderland. Pretty much an abject performance. What do you put that down to?
I think it's always difficult when you've just come off of a game where the squad's been rotated. You know, it's hard sometimes to keep that momentum. So I think that partly had something to do with it. The other thing I think is just Sunderland were fighting for their lives. From what I saw of the game, they were sort of entrenched in their own half. They weren't too adventurous, and it was always going to be difficult to break them down. Sadly, and it just happened to be one of those nights where nothing went right for us.
Yeah, coming to you, Jace. I know you made that trip up to the North East. I really do salute you for that one. How was the trip as well?
Oh, the trip was fine. You know, it's since coming back for holidays and that over the past few years, it was the wife's first genuine away day. So, in terms of the game, wasn't much of a game to watch, but it was still a great buzz and a good laugh to get off that train at Sunderland and be singing all the way through the streets up to the stadium and the noise in the pub before the game. And that's what away days are mainly about. So that the football was almost secondary to it, although I have to say for myself, it was a long old trip for a 0-0 draw.
It was indeed. And Jace, just sticking with that, I mean, I think it's fair to say, unfortunately, the support didn't match the performance last night. What do you put that down to? Anything in particular at all for you?
It's difficult to know, isn't it? Because, part of that rotation debate that we always have around cup games is to make sure players are nice and fresh for the league games. So there was absolutely no reason for our performance to be flat. And just one of those really strange games that we never, even though we dominated the game, I didn't feel there was ever a period when we looked like we'd score. We never really had a little 5 or 10 minute spell where the keeper's being forced into making saves and defenders into last-ditch defending, and you kind of get the feeling that if the game was going on now, it would still be 0-0, 24 hours later. Losing Danny Rose was a blow to us, but it's one of those games that teams seem to have. It's difficult to put a finger on it.
Was indeed. Coming to you, Vaz, Jakes makes the point there about Danny Rose, who looks like at the moment the rumours are that it's suspected medial ligament damage which could rule him out of the next month. Just how pivotal is he to our play? Because I think when he went off, we just didn't look the same team. Like I say, he does bring us that attacking intent on the left. And I think it's fair to say Ben Davies, as good as a left-back he is in terms of a replacement, he just isn't the same kind of player that, Rose is. Is he going to be a massive loss to us, potentially?
Yes, definitely, Ricky. I think Danny Rose is key player for us. I mean, both full-backs are, no question. The thing is, when we have anything like an injury to Kyle Walker, Trippier steps in, and whilst he's not the best defender, he still offers us something going forward on the right side. Davies, on the other hand, over on the left side, as a replacement for Danny Rose, he struggles somewhat. He's not as dynamic as Danny Rose is, that's for sure. And I think we lose some impetus there. There's occasions when, for example, one of our midfielders might be taking the ball forward and looking for that overlapping run that Danny would normally make, and Davis just isn't there. I think he's predominantly a defensive-minded left-back as opposed to an offensive-minded left-back, which Danny Rose definitely is.
Yeah, I mean, I only hope so far, I think, it's the Sun that are reporting it's a month, so hopefully on that basis he should be back at the weekend, but we won't.
Bit of luck.
Well, a bit of luck, we won't hold our breath. Coming back to you, Jace, I have to ask you this question. Obviously, subconsciously, we need reminding that it's only 2 defeats in our last 23 games, but also we have, the most draws now in the league, 8 of them, a potential 16 points that have gone amiss. Is that ultimately where we've lost the potential of being in this title race, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, because I think, the 2 defeats is excellent because we've had some really tough games. And if you can grind out results from those tough ones as we did at, say, Manchester City, that's fine. But the game last night, if you're genuinely title-winning side, you've got to go to Sunderland and win it. And, the frustration was they absolutely offered nothing last night at all. So it wasn't necessarily even a hard game to try and go and win. It's not a game where we've needed our goalkeeper to make 2 or 3 saves to keep us in it. Nothing like that at all. It's just a really standard away win that you should be able to go and pick up. And as I say, they offered absolutely nothing, Sunderland, nothing at all. And it was really disappointing. We weren't able to find a way through them because we should have done. And it's definitely drop points like that will prove costly.
Yeah, it really, really is. Back to you, Vaz. We've collected the fewest amount of points away outside the top 6, just 18 out of a possible 36. On that basis, I know we've said about how much Spurs have grown under Pochettino, and I know you're a massive, massive fan of Poch and how he's progressed Spurs in the league. Is there also a bit of frustration that we don't seem to maybe learn on the basis of what we've done last season? We're still obviously failing to maybe address certain areas in the squad where we need someone to maybe come on and change the game in these away fixtures.
I think teams are setting up differently against us now, even when they're playing at home. I think last season we were able to secure more away wins because home teams generally would at least try and play against us. But you saw from Sunderland yesterday that they just had no intention. And whilst the draws are frustrating, Liverpool have had 7, the Goons have had 5. Man United have had 8. Draws happen in football, sadly. They're just made to look worse when other teams around you drop points, unfortunately. In terms of game changers, yeah, that's an argument that's been thrown, and you can discuss that. Of course, it would be nice to have a game changer off the bench, but somebody like Lamela might have been that man, but he's injured at the moment. And unfortunately, Sissoko and Son, who both have that ability, a little bit inconsistent at the moment. I mean, I know Son started, he wasn't on the bench last night, but these sort of players that don't play as regularly aren't coming in and hitting the ground running, so that's a little bit of a problem too.
It is. And Jace, I said last night myself on Twitter that I wasn't going to sit there and start hand-picking players out, but obviously the next day when you review back the highlights, you can't help but be frustrated at some of the non-existent performers in there. There's so many, but one player that, has shown promise in the last few weeks has been Heung-min Son. He's very much been, like I say, the impact player from the bench. He started against Wycombe. He got his goals, he played well. He was then rewarded last night with a start by Pochettino. And again, I mean, he did work hard in certain areas of the game, but when are we going to find that consistency that we're ultimately craving from him? Because he's a player that, no doubt, on his day, he's one of the best in the league, but we're just not seeing it regular enough, are we?
No, and as you're right, he thoroughly deserved his place. With the situation with Yam missing, I thought we would go 4-2-3-1, and I thought Son had earned his place with the goal at City and his performance Saturday. And I think if you're picking players on what they're doing on the pitch at the moment, he got that spot, which is what he deserved. But yesterday was a really frustrating game for him. But the one thing I thought with Son yesterday, of our attacking 4 players, if you like, he was the one that was more prominent in the game than anyone else. He was at least trying to take his man on. And yeah, he made a few wrong decisions at times, but he was involved in the game. Whereas for me, that's a game last night. You've got to look at the big 3, if you like, of Ali, Kane and Eriksen, and they had no influence on the game at all. And I mean, I think everyone knows that now, massive fan of Dele Alli, but he was really disappointing last night. Was on the edge of the game, never really imposed himself, tried a few fancy tricks that didn't come off. And whilst it's easy to point at Son making the wrong decision at times, for me that's a game that those three players had to stand up in, and it's up to them to have come up with something themselves. And unfortunately, it was a night where none of those three did anything.
No, I think I say it's pretty much that. I mean, that is evidently the case. Vaz, I have to ask you this question. Listen, I think we're all massive fans of Pochettino and where he's taken us from, as we've already stated. His decision-making on the whole, substitution-wise, do you feel that he normally, like I say, he's on point with his subs? Do you think they could come a little bit earlier? And I'm only suggesting that last night, we're chasing a game. We've got a £17 million striker there on the bench, and granted, he's not been on the greatest run of form, but Janssen's getting, a minimum, like 8-9 minutes to come on and make a difference. Would you say that there could be that argument that he could make his subs earlier?
Yes, he could do, but I think with Janssen, I think that it's an issue. I don't think the club expected him to struggle as he has, obviously. And they said the other day, or Pochettino said the other day, that he needs time. And so he's got this situation now where he's got the guy sitting on the bench, but he doesn't want to give him too much exposure. Maybe he feels he's not quite there yet. He struggled in recent games, Janssen, when he's on, and he got yanked off at half-time the other week when we were struggling. So there's something not quite right there. I mean, to put him on with half an hour to go in a game where we're struggling, and he hasn't got any real form to rely on aside from a few penalties, I don't know whether he would have made the difference, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, Pochettino could make his substitution somewhat earlier on occasion, but then there's been other occasions where he's been spot on. So it's a difficult one, really, Ricky, I think.
I think as well he could have been perhaps a little bit more daring last night, in that now we're at that stage where Sunderland were clearly not going to come at us. Maybe the thing to do is you're thinking, well, the best we're going to get out of this is a point with Wanyama on the pitch. Maybe if we'd have, say, brought a Winks on for Wanyama, or maybe even a Jensen on for Wanyama, yes, there's more of a chance of being caught on the break. But maybe that would have made Sunderland just think, well, there's a chance for us to try and push on for the win, and almost invite them out a little bit more by making us just that little bit more open for them to come forward. And if you're only going to drop a point, but there's a gamble then to really go on and push for the 3, maybe that's the gamble that he could have taken. But as Vaz has just said, I think, sometimes he's got it right with the substitutions. We've seen him do it, and sometimes it doesn't work out for you, and it was just one of those last night that didn't work out.
And like you said there, boys, it's a case of swings and roundabouts, isn't it? Because there's been times this season where he has made the calls, and like I say, Son has come on and made an impact on the game and scored goals. So it is hard to judge, but on the basis of last night, there was that frustration there that we're chasing a game, and like I say, we've got a striker that we've paid all this money for on the bench who can't get on, and you just think, well, the amount of money we've paid for him, it's astounding that he can't get on. Vas, what do you make of Janssen, very quickly? I mean, we've spoken about him such a lot on this podcast. Do you envisage he'll be a Spurs player this time next season, or do you think it's unfortunately hasn't worked out for him?
Well, I think he'll have another season. I think Pochettino will probably want to work with him a little longer. He is a full Dutch international. I think the issue with Janssen is that his rise has been somewhat meteoric. He was released by, was it Feyenoord? I can't remember now, or one of the big clubs in Holland, and he went to Alkmaar. He went to another club in the lower tier for a season or so. Then he went to Alkmaar, had a fantastic season at Alkmaar, and then he ended up at White Hart Lane with a massive transfer fee. So within the space of about 3 seasons, this guy has just shot up the ranks, and he's made the Dutch national team. He finds himself in the Premier League, and the game at times just looks beyond him, and his awareness of the game seems a little bit lacking at times. He's not sure when to run, when to hold. He's usually caught offside. He's not really clicking with the rest of the team or the pace of the game at the moment. And I think those struggles are becoming apparent to Pochettino, and this is why the other weekend he said Janssen needs time. When he was questioning all of our fringe players to some degree, he did make specific comment about Janssen and said that he needed time. So I think he'll get another season, and hopefully he'll come along. He is still very young as well, we shouldn't forget. No,
I agree, and I say for the amount of money we've put there as an investment, you would really think to yourself, then, you want, obviously, the player to go on and perform well. But like I say, we've seen with the likes of Eric Lamela that, unfortunately, it doesn't always necessarily happen straight away. And again, I think it'll be a case of who is around in the summer. Can we get someone for, a good value money that can come in and act as competition? I just want your boys' thoughts to the closing of the transfer window. Would there be any kind of regret we've not moved for anyone, Jace, very quickly on that?
We've always said it's a question of who you can move for, and I think Pochettino certainly is one of those persons that he's not interested in a panic buy for 3 or 4 months just for the sake of doing it. I think he thinks, if I've got to spend £7 or £8 million on a panic buy, I'd sooner keep that money back and turn a £15 million transfer into a £25 million transfer in the summer. And I agree with him in that. And I mean, what did we lose out on last night in terms, really? Because
Jay Rodriguez was the only. I mean, to be fair, the only striker really linked this there was Jay Rodriguez. I mean, I think a lot of us last night, I'll be honest, I was probably one of the worst. I said I would take him on one leg after watching that. But I think it was the Sunderland game itself, because of the frustration of not breaking them down. Would it have been worth a gamble? I mean, is someone better than no one? Would you have taken him, Jason, or not really?
No, and how many goals has he scored for Southampton this year?
No, but for me, he is proven in the Premier League, and whilst Janssen is still adapting, I mean, my biggest concern, Vass, I don't know whether you agree, is an injury to Harry Kane, and, forget maybe the title, but even, our top 4 place then is under threat. Would you go on the lines of that, or would you still be confident what we've got in reserve?
Well, we've survived without Harry Kane earlier this season. Of course, you don't want him to be injured, and he would be a massive loss, no question about it, because there is a drop-off between Kane and anybody else who's going to take his position from our current roster of players. But we've survived without him for a short period this season. We also ran that risk last season, and we sort of got away with it. The January transfer window, for me, it's a waste of time, to be perfectly honest. I caught the end of BT Sport last night, and Stephen Gerrard said something that was quite made sense, and he felt that the top 6 clubs in the Premier League at the moment, they're more or less settled their first 11s, and to go out and buy somebody right now would mean buying somebody who would be able to slot straight into your first 11, and there aren't those players out there at the moment in any case. So it's a hard one. It really is a hard one to buy players in January, and like Jace says, who do you buy? Who's available? That's always an issue for any club.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that the targets we may be looking for probably just aren't obtainable this window. The likes of, maybe Wilfred Zaha, the likes of Ross Barkley. I don't think these players, like I say, their clubs are going to let them go. It may be a case where if you look in the summer to what a lot of chairmen say, that the price is completely different to what you're being quoted yesterday. But as always, guys, we've got some questions to put to Jason, and we've got Vass this week, so we'll be back after this short break. We'll be putting your questions to the panel. Hi guys, thanks for rejoining us here on the e-Spurs podcast. As you know, we ask you to get in touch with us every week on any questions you have for the panel, whether it be anything CHFC related or whether it be from just a game we've just played. And as always, you get into us in your droves. If you haven't contributed before to the e-Spurs podcast and you would like to do so, all you've got to simply do is tweet your question, topic, to @e_Spurs. Ask your question and leave that in the hashtag eSpursPod, and we'll read out your question to the panel every week for an answer. So, tonight we've got a range of questions, all pretty much relating to last night's game against Sunderland. We'll come to you first tonight, Vass. We've got Paolo Untasca, I hope I pronounced that right, at Pianto Skablog, who asks, do you feel Tottenham are missing a creative player to come off the bench and win us a game?
Yeah, that's something we touched on earlier, isn't it, Rick? I mean, for me, I know Lamela has his critics, but he could be that guy if he's fit. Aside from that, I know there's been links with Isco. I'm not sure how realistic that would be, or if he would ever leave Madrid, come to that. But, I mean, creativity, if you look at our team, we should really have it, shouldn't we? We've got Ali, we've got Ericsson, but as Jay said earlier, they didn't really perform last night. It's a tricky one. We probably could do with another 1 or 2 players of that ilk, but they'll come at a cost.
I mean, it's not very often, Vass, going back to it, we have a night like that where everyone, attacking-wise, pretty much freezes. And I'm referring to the likes of Harry Kane, Dele Alli, Heung-min Son. I mean, it's not often we have that problem where like I say, everyone on the night just doesn't perform, and it was, like I say, just one of those performances where it was just non-existent. Do we just afford that as a one-off? Because we can't really afford to have many more of them if we are to, like I say, really mount to get into this Champions League if we can't challenge for the league.
No, we can't have too many of those. But then you look at the game against Manchester City, for example, and City should have been out of sight, and yet we came away with a point on that day. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts. Sometimes you're going to play poorly and get a win or a draw. Sometimes you're going to play well and not manage to win. And other times you're just going to have a bad night like we did last night. So hopefully we won't have any more of those. And if we win on Saturday against Borough, then, everybody's mental state changes, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, like I say, it's very much kind of always a game at a time, and if Spurs get a win against Borough, suddenly, depending on other results, the circumstances will very much hopefully change. We're going to come to you next, Jace. We've got Hotshot Tottenham at Udo90, who asked a great point that we haven't really picked up on in the main briefing we done, and he asked, why didn't we play three at the back? Has Poch finally had enough of squad players? And it's a great point because, we've been playing three at the back in the last couple of games, and it's worked so well, so why change it, really?
I think Kevin Wimmer's performances have obviously given him a real worry about doing that, because, he'd been hooked in the two games and he has looked a little bit unsteady, and I think he just thinks, maybe Jermaine Defoe would peel off onto Kevin Wimmer, and I'm not too keen on allowing that to happen. And I think, as I say, I think the other part of that equation was that Son, having come on at Man City and played so well against Wickham, had probably deserved a start, and for Son to get that start, but to keep the back three, then does it mean dropping Ali or Ericsson or Kane? And so I think he thought, look, I've got one player I could pick who's not in great form, and I've got one player that can come into the team that is in good form, but that I need to change the shape on. And I mean, in fairness, last night, even if he had gone to the three at the back, the Danny Rose injury, 35 minutes in, would have necessitated Ben Davies coming on at that stage, and we'd have lost that threat anyway. So, and he'd have probably ended up moving Kevin Wimmer into that left back role and gone to a back four even at that stage. So I think, I understand the question, but I think on the actual day itself, it just wouldn't have panned out that way as he intended.
I agree with you.
Fair enough. I hope that answers your question. Going to come back to you, Vas. A question here from Dan Smith at DanSmith1984, who asks, do you believe, should we go another season without a trophy, we should be concerned about our players, that the fact we are so close but still not winning trophies? What do you think, Vas, on that?
No, I wouldn't be concerned just yet. Not if it was just another season. Bear in mind, great managers that have passed, like Bill Nicholson, maybe Keith Bergenshaw, probably went about 3 seasons, if I'm not mistaken, before they won a trophy. We're really only into Pochettino's third season now, isn't it? Yeah. So maybe it's getting to that time. But, I fancy us to maybe do something this season, hopefully in the FA Cup. And if not, then I would be looking for a trophy next season, almost definitely. I think the team is growing and it's moving in the right direction. And I think, for me personally, trophies will come.
In terms of you, we haven't really asked this question, Vas. Pochettino's cup selections, we've mentioned them in the past. We've obviously got a great opportunity in the FA Cup now. I mean, like I say, Fulham away, although, like I say, it's a London derby, it is against lower level opposition. And then we've got the Europa League as well, we've got the games at Wembley. Would you like to see Spurs go more for the cups this year? What's your kind of perspective on it? Or are you very much a kind of league man, you want to see Spurs keep progressing in the league?
No, I'm a bit old school. I want to see us win silverware. It would be nice. I think the problem we had last season was Pochettino got caught between a rock and a hard place. We were going well in the Europa League, and then we suddenly found ourselves in the midst of a title challenge, something that we didn't expect, and a position we hadn't been in for a long, long time. And he almost dropped the Europa League campaign, if you remember, against Dortmund, and tried to focus on the league, and it sort of backfired for him. And I think his position will be determined about how well we're doing in either of the 3 competitions. I'd like to see him field a slightly stronger team in the cup competitions, because in my mind you've got to go out to win them. And the game against Fulham at Craven Cottage, albeit that they're a championship side, we need to have a stronger team out than we did against Wickham the other day. So I'm hoping that there'll be less changes for that one, and he plays a few more of the big guns, as should we say, and just get the job done there. And if we do that, then, you're in the quarterfinals after that, and Wembley's within touching distance, isn't it?
It is indeed. Just on that, Vas, do you think it's easier from this season? Because, I think we're all in the agreement now that the title race, as much as, like I say, nothing changed for us last night, we're still 9 points off. Is it easier in the case that, no one's really expecting us now to have a real tilt at the title? I don't think any of us are going to see Chelsea drop, lose 4 games. Do you think it makes it easier for him in terms of being able now to put a strong team out in the Cups?
It could be. I think because, like you say, Chelsea have a big lead. The teams in 2nd and up to 6th position are all closely packed. I would imagine that most of the pundits and media are expecting Tottenham to fall away at some point and just have the usual crowd up there again. But I think we'll do well. I think we should qualify for Champions League. And if he feels that the title is out of the question, then I think he should really concentrate on the Cups. That said, if Chelsea lose 1 or 2 games, then the emphasis changes again, and Pochettino will have another dilemma on his hands if we're still up there and challenging.
No, I think that hopefully answers your question there, Dan. Going to come back to you, Jace. We've got Ray Grit at Ray_Grit, who asks, what happened last night? Was it a case of playing a back 4 rather than a 3, or was it just a bad day at the office?
Well, for me, I think it's the latter. It was a bad day at the office. I thought the team, as I just said, the team was spot on for me. That 3 at the back system works if you've got the players to play it, and you have to find different ways of playing. You can't just be one way of, right, that's our new tactic, 3 at the back, and that's going to beat absolutely everything in front of us. There's no guarantee it would have worked anyway, is there? So, the big players didn't show up last night, and I think you have to look at that more than the tactical side of the game.
Yeah, fair enough, Ray. Oh, fair enough, Jay, should I say? I hope, Ray, that answers your question.
Ray's me dad, mate, that's all right.
All right, there you go. Harry, well, we're going to come back to you, Vas, for the last question of tonight from Harry Charalambos at Hotspur22, and he's alluding to this transfer window. He asks, if Pochettino doesn't have the trust in his players, why didn't he try to get the ball to improve on the situation? I think what Harry might be referring to is that Pochettino, after the game against Wickham, in his post-match press conference, says that obviously if he can't trust the fringe players, he's going to have a problem. What do you make of that question, Vas? Do you think it's a case that he doesn't have trust in some of the players?
That could be a factor. He could just be giving them a kick up the backside that some of them may need. But there's so many things that you have to take account of, and that firstly, who's available, what cup competitions have they already played in? Would they be cup tied for Europa or for the FA Cup? It's a tricky time to do business. The only sort of transactions that tend to go through are from clubs that are desperate to make additions to their squads. Now, are Spurs desperate at this present moment in time? I'd say probably not. So I think he'll ride it out until the summer, and if he feels that some of the fringe players aren't up to scratch, then he'll probably be looking to address that at that time rather than in January.
You would say he generally trusts the majority of his squad. He likes to work with a fairly, I wouldn't say a small squad, but the players he picks from. What he doesn't want to do, as we've seen in the past, is block the pathway to anyone else. With just very quickly, lads, on the situation with Danny Rose now, are we going to see Ben Davies come back in? Or, would that be the personnel you go for, Vas? Would you just reckon Ben Davies will come in, do you reckon, to cover Danny Rose?
The alternative would be to go with 3 at the back and have Davies playing on the left, which he does quite well for Wales. I'd probably trust him more there than as a marauding left back, which is what Danny Rose tends to be. But then the problem is, if you do play a 3, who do you play on the left side of that 3? Maybe you can stick Son out there. He seems to be quite comfortable playing on the left. But I heard today rumblings of maybe Kyle Walker-Peters will be, added to the squad if Rose is out for any lengthy period of time. It'd be an interesting one, but I'd probably go with a 3 at the back and play Davies there if he's lost faith in Wimmer, and then have Son or somebody on the left.
Just on that question to you, Jace, he's getting rave reviews at the moment in the reserves, Kyle Walker-Peters. I know John, previously on the podcast, has spoken very highly of the young lad. Would you like to see him given a chance, or are you of the opinion maybe it's a bit too early for him?
Well, I think we may well see him get a chance with Ghent or Fulham on the horizon, but it's a difficult one, isn't it? If you play Son as with a back three and then play Son on that side, does Son really do enough work defensively where you could get away with doing that? Walker-Peters, we're talking about a young kid that's never even had a minute in the first team. And I think, if you're looking for someone like that to be the fix to a team that's pushing for the top four, you're asking a hell of a lot for the boy. And when he does come in, you want him to be able to play reasonably pressure-free rather than be the fix that the team needs. I think we will see probably a back four with Ben Davies, and we have to solve it ourselves. We have to say, look, Ben Davies is not a wing-back. He hasn't got the same threat as Danny Rose. He hasn't got the pace or the energy of Danny Rose, but he is a very solid left-back if he plays as a left-back. So we have to adjust the team in other areas and look to do something else somewhere, elsewhere in the side.
Yeah, it's fair comment, yeah.
Maybe it is Lamela coming back in, that plays instead of Son or something, and we move Ericsson and Ali and go back to a genuine 4-2-3-1 that way. Or maybe you have to think, right, well maybe it is time to partner Jansen with Kane and go 4-4-2 or something. But I think, to ask Ben Davies to play to a position that he's not comfortable in, or to pick a young kid is not the way to do it.
You agree with that, Vaz? Do you reckon?
That's fair comment. Yeah, that's fair comment on reflection. I think going three at the back does leave us exposed as to who plays the role that Danny Rose would ordinarily play. So that's a fair comment. Lamela coming back might kind of solve that problem, but likelihood is we will go four at the back and Ben Davies at left back.
The biggest example of that I can think of was that Chelsea winner, where we had Wimmer playing on that side, and so say it's Ben Davies instead of Wimmer, and Son was playing that day, wasn't he? And he allowed Victor Moses to make 70-yard run and score in about 25 yards of space totally on his own. So I think that's the danger with doing that.
Yeah. All right, lads. Well, let's take a look to the weekend. Then we've got Middlesbrough at home. Middlesbrough sitting 15th in the league at the moment. So, like I say, they are very much in that kind of bottom half, very much kind of encroached in that relegation battle at the moment. I think, Vass, what do you think we're going to make of it? It's going to be one of those games, isn't it, where it's going to be, again, 11 men behind the ball, break us down, and hopefully we can.
Yeah, the good thing is our home form's been pretty good up to now. And if the crowd get behind the team early, and we can break through early, then I think that should be a win for us. It won't be easy. Games in the Premier League never are. But I'm more confident with us playing at home at the moment than I am away for obvious reasons. So I think we should get the 3 points.
Yeah, they've shown themselves, Jason, in the past, Barrow, to be quite a resilient away side. They've got a point up against Arsenal. I think they've got a couple of points also against the big guns away from home. Negredo, obviously one of their key players. Is he a player we have to watch, or, like I say, should we be more focused on us doing our job, and hopefully, like I say, the players we've got should take care of the job?
Well, I think the player we need to watch from their point of view is Traore, who's incredibly inconsistent. And, we talk about Son not delivering as much as we'd like him to do, but Traore is even worse. But particularly with the Danny Rose injury, because he tends to play down that right-hand side, he has got pace to burn, hasn't he? We see it pace from a standing start, where he just goes past people, and therefore whoever plays on that left-hand side of the defence, whether it's three at the back, four at the back, whether we have, there's a big space there that we leave, that's going to be the area I think Middlesbrough will look to exploit us on, and where we could well be vulnerable to a counter-attack. And I think Middlesbrough will be a genuine part of the bus side. They will really make life hard for us, do all the cynical shirt pulling, the breaking up of play, the time wasting and things, almost Tony Pulis style, but they'll have that threat through Traore all the time. And the thing is, when he does eventually get free, can he then deliver a ball into the box? But it'll be a tough one. It's one that I haven't been looking forward to this week for sure.
Vass, I have to ask you this question. You might not like me asking you this question. It's a bit of a defining weekend, this one. We've got Chelsea playing Arsenal. Who would you rather get a result there? It's almost like me asking you, would you rather be drowned or set on fire? What would be your preference on result on that one?
Can't they both lose? Jeez, that's a hard one.
It's one of those now where you look at it and you think, are we going to catch Chelsea? And I think the heart might say, our head might say yes, but I think our heart probably doesn't think we will. and then you look at Arsenal, and it's a chance to maybe, if Chelsea do win, extend the gap against them, where, like I say, we gained a point on them last night, we can gain a further 3 on them at the weekend, providing we do our job, and Chelsea beat them.
Yeah.
And like I say, we've seen the last season how we capitulated, and like I say, they overtook us. Would you rather see us extend the gap over them, or what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it is a tricky one. I mean, I'd probably sit on the fence and have them both draw and take a point each. The only reason I say that is that it will be, I can't see Arsenal beating Chelsea. So if Chelsea can drop 2 points rather than 3, then that's fine for me. As far as Arsenal goes, though, I think we can deal with that threat that comes from them, because they do have this propensity to implode, which they showed again last night at home to Watford, and Arsenal are capable of that. They do that every season and causes their fans to go mental. But I think as well we've still got to play Arsenal at White Hart Lane, haven't we? So I'd fancy us there. So I wouldn't worry. I would never want Arsenal to win anyway. So I think a draw would probably be the optimum for me.
Fair enough. And Jay, same question to you.
Well, it's an easy one for me, because as much as I despise Chelsea, I have absolute deep-rooted hatred for the other mob. So, and I think it doesn't matter who they play. I hope they get beat. But seriously, I think Arsenal are far more of a danger to our position than we are to Chelsea's position.
Well, that's
and therefore,
it,
for me,
yeah.
Exactly. And so every single point advantage we can get over the teams that are third to sixth at the moment benefits us far more than anything we can gain on Chelsea. So for me, hopefully Chelsea beat them 10-0 or something like that, or maybe there's an earth tremor in the stadium or something, and we can cure 40,000 in one go or something like that. But no, for me, Chelsea win all day long.
Yeah, when push comes to shove, I know I'll be supporting Chelsea, to be perfectly honest, as much as I can't stand them. But yeah, I'll take your point. I think you see, in my answer, I clearly gave away the fact that I still got this little deep-rooted hope that we might win the title. Yeah,
I think we have to be Spurs. I can't help it. That's the Spurs. Unfortunately, optimism shining through. Just out of interest, then, lads, on that, like you've just said there, you both want rooting for Chelsea. Jace, I have to ask you then, if Chelsea were playing the likes of a Man United or a Liverpool, would it still be the same then for you? You'd still want Chelsea to win in order to kind of alleviate that gap and give us a bit more room? Is that how you're looking at it now?
On a normal season, you'd hope they get beat, but I think at the moment, we're at that stage where let's be fair, Chelsea winning last night would have been more benefit to us than them dropping the 2 points, wouldn't it? As the night turned out with us dropping points at Sunderland. So for me, I think when Chelsea play Man United and they play Man City now at Stamford Bridge and that, I think we need Chelsea to win all of those games.
And stupid question, lads, should we do our bit and the Red Half do get a result, do we stupidly start thinking we're back in it, or are we still kind of the fact that I think it is going to be still too? I
think, as I said, Rick, last week, you look at Chelsea and you think they will get to minimum 86 points, quite possibly up to 90 points. So even if results go, Arsenal get a result there, and we've still got to go to Liverpool and do the business the week after that. But for us to get 86, 88 points, something like that, which is, I think, what we're genuinely going to need now, you're talking about 13 wins and 2 draws from 15 games. And that's unlikely, isn't it? Let's be fair. So, I think even if Chelsea lose Saturday and then they lose the following week, I still don't think we're genuinely then back in a race.
What do you reckon, Vaz?
Sadly, yes. Yeah, he makes a good point, Jace. It is looking, as the games run out, it becomes ever more difficult, doesn't it? It looks like it's Chelsea's, and I said at the start of the season that they're going to have a free run to the title, and so it's proved. No European distractions. They play the same team week in, week out. They get the momentum going, and it's clearly worked in their favour, and they're looking unstoppable at the moment.
There you go. Well, let's get some predictions then for Borough. We'll stick with you, Vas. What do you reckon you're going to go? What will you go for?
Well, with fingers crossed, I'd say 2-0.
2-0. And in terms of the teams, would you change anything of the starting 11? Would you shake it up a little at all? Would you give Janssen a start, or would you leave it as it is?
No, I think I'd probably keep it the same. Yeah. Obviously, Davies will come in for Rose.
Yeah.
And maybe Lloris for Vaughan, clearly, but I'd keep it the same personally.
Fair enough. And Jace, prediction, team, what are you going for?
I think the team, Ben Davies replaces Danny Rose, and from that moment on the team stays the same. And as I say, I think probably if it's one of those games that looks like it's tight, I hope that maybe he takes the gamble of taking a Wanyama off and puts the risk of a defeat in place, but gives us more chance of maybe inviting them to come on at us by doing so. So I'll go 2-1 Tottenham. I think it could be a really tight, nervy afternoon, and I do feel that they'll get a chance to score and may well take one.
And like I say, hopefully Hugo will be back all and well for that one. Harry Winks, is he worth a look in for Saturday, or...?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it depends if Dembele's feeling any after effects of being assassinated by Rodwell last night. How was that not a sending off?
We have not really spoken about it. Very quickly on that, lads. It was literally, for me, it could have been on BBC One's Crime Watch. It was absolutely brutal. I mean, Vas, I know you probably saw it on the highlights. What did you make of that challenge? Or was it even a tackle? I don't know what you want to call it. Borderline assault, wasn't it?
By letter of law, I'm speaking as an ex-ref now, that was a red card. I mean, he didn't just trip Dembele. If it was a trip, then you say yellow card, but that was an actual kick. He kicked Dembele over. That was a red card offence all day long, and we don't know how that would have panned out. Somebody said today that it galvanised Sunderland and they got their tails up after that. If it did, then it was the polar opposite of what should have been, because if he'd have been off, then they'd have been down to 10 men, and who knows, the game might have been different. Yeah,
and Jace, what did you make of that challenge? I mean, you was there. Could you see it from your seat? I know you was up in the gods, but...
More or less the back row. It looked like one ant and tackled another ant to me. But No, it was only when I saw the highlights. I was astonished when I saw it on the highlights, and particularly because Lee Mason was about 3 yards away. And I think when I've seen some of the super slow-mos, the reaction of Harry when he sees the referee go to his pocket and actually only produce yellow, the look of astonishment on all the players' faces, they know it should be red. They really do. But as I said about Jack Rodwell, mate, it's isn't it? He signed three and a half years ago for Sunderland. He started 36 games for them and hasn't won a single game. And I think he's now gone 1,340 days since he last started a game in which he signed one. So there's some karma in that stat, isn't there, for last night? That's for sure.
And we thought the Gareth Bale record was bad when he was here, so it just shows it has been beaten somewhere.
Yeah, and to think he was a bright hope of English football at one stage, because he looked a half-decent player at Everton, didn't he? So, perhaps that's the worry about signing Ross Barkley, that you'll take him from there and he'll go 3.5 years without winning a game.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would take Ross Barkley either, to be honest, but there you go.
All remains to be seen. Well, at least with the window's now closed, we've got the squad. Like I say, we're sticking with what we've got. Pochettino's made the decision that, like I say, he's happy with what he's got, and then, like I say, hopefully now, fingers crossed, we'll be talking on the back of another win. Vas, pleasure joining with us tonight. Thank you very much for all your time.
No, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. It's been great.
Glad you've enjoyed it. And Jace, thank you as always.
No problem, mate. And let's not drop our heads too much just because of last night.
No, exactly. We've got a very big game at the weekend. Have to get 3 points there. And having, like I say, we're back talking to you guys next week on the back of winning ways. Guys, as always, thank you very much for your time. Hope you enjoy the podcast. And as always, come on, you Spurs.